Welcome again to On the Couch. Today we have a special surprise for you. We are bright and early in Parliament with the most incredible woman, an inspiration, and I'm very, very excited to meet you and to introduce you to our wonderful people watching us. Dianne Kohler Barnard, welcome today to On the Couch with myself.
Thanks, Corinne.
So I believe that I would like to get to know you, and I'd like the people to get to know you. I know you're this incredible inspiration, and you're a member of Parliament, but I believe that you were a journalist before. How did you find that voyage for yourself?
Well, I always wanted to be a journalist. That was my aim.
Yes.
And I trained, I matriculated at 15, so my mother said I was too young to go to Grahamstown. And so I did a degree in Durban.
At 15? Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
And then went on to do a second degree in journalism. But I just did 1 year full-time and then started freelancing at the SABC in radio.
Okay.
On one of the first call-in programs in the country. On the old station used to be Radio Port Natal's, now East Coast Radio.
Yes.
And that was the very first one. So that was a very exciting time in radio and a lot of fun. And I did that for many years as a journalist. I also did a lot of television, magazine work, all the rest. Went to London for some years doing the same sort of stuff. Came back again, and then I was quite senior in radio at that stage with many programs such as Out to Lunch and all the other programs I was doing. And I was then approached by Tony Leon.
Oh, were you? So that is how the whole thing...
That's how it started.
Okay.
And I was quite rude to Tony Leon. I said, look, I don't like politicians. You're all the same. You're sleazy and I want nothing to do with you. And he pushed and pushed and pushed. So I eventually took him to a lunch where I knew he couldn't pay because I was a member and he wasn't. And they finally convinced me to stand in what they called an electoral college.
Okay.
Stand before them, and I said, well, let me do this thing, but we'll just keep it quiet. I'll see if I like you and you like me, and then we'll talk further. And they then put me first on the list after the leader is automatically there, and it was not confidential because someone leaked it. So there was a very hysterical cartoon by Zapiro outing me, doing the Janet Jackson thing with the nipple ring being DA, and the papers are all shocked, and of course the ANC were furious and tried to get me thrown out. But I was also head of the union in KwaZulu-Natal at the SABC, and so I fought them tooth and nail. I thought no, because I knew there were a number of ANC people standing for Parliament and other jobs like that, and they weren't under attack at all.
Amazing.
So I fought till the last day, then I handed in my resignation, flew to Cape Town.
And that's where it began?
It all began, yes.
And how long has it been now that you've been Member of Parliament?
I've been here for 13 years, or nearly 13 years. So we have another almost 2.5 years till the end of the term. Yes. So that will be 15 because each term's 5 years. Okay. And then you'll try. Hopefully I'll do one more term. But, you know, it's a very strange life, specifically for women, because women give up their families, their home life and everything for 3 to 4 days a week. It's 4 terms, like school. Wow. 4 terms.
And you commute, don't you, between all over the place?
I see those air hostesses more often than I see members of my family, which is quite shameful, but that's what happens. You lose some contact with the people in your province, and you don't quite have the same contact with people in Cape Town because you work. The sittings sit till very late every night, so it's a strange life, and it's not easy to convince people to become members of Parliament.
How do you balance life? How do you balance your working career, your family, your friends, you know, just life in general for yourself?
Well, it is very difficult. At some stages I just pull in and don't see people at all in either province. I just work, and I have a tendency to work too hard, as anyone who's ever been a journalist understands. Yes. You don't really have a life. But then sometimes I try and convince myself I have to, and so I try and fit in something on a Saturday evening, because most Saturdays one is working in one's constituency, and a Friday, every Monday's meetings. But I also have certain members who go to certain churches that are on a Saturday, but they're only free on a Sunday. So I was working 7 days a week.
Sure. So it's quite an undertaking if anyone is ever considering getting into politics. That really, really is.
It's not an easy job, and my sister keeps saying, "Get a real job." So yes, it's not easy. It's not for sissies, and you are a
You've
constant
got to have a
target.
backbone. No, I can imagine.
Yes.
That's what I was going to ask you. There must be a lot of conflicting, all sorts of things that happen around you, in politics. People trying to, you don't even know who your friends are, I'm sure, a lot of the time.
No, you don't. Look, from a political point of view, the more you succeed, the more the ANC, as your opponents across the floor, will try to destroy you.
Absolutely.
So that is what you have to expect. What one perhaps doesn't expect is that also it's very competitive within your own province. You're not really
not just
friends.
yes,
You're competing for a job. And if you do very well at your job, people, again, so you have a target on your front and a target on your back. And it can make it very difficult to deal with. I'm sure you've experienced a great deal of exactly the same situation in your career.
Very much so, without a doubt.
Yes.
And community projects, because that's the whole thing about women empowerment, empowering others. What projects are you involved in?
There are endless projects. For example, my constituency starts at Umlazi, and which is really, to me, as big as New York. It's just this massive area, and it still has strange apartheid names like Section A and Section AA.
Really?
And
my goodness.
it's not like a Westfield and a Pinetown, or which it should be. So nothing's been done to change any of that.
Which is tragic.
It is sad. It's a long time, and it's still very odd.
Yes.
But one is dealing with rural women who are very interested in market garden, herbal markets, etc. Those sort of issues, sewing issues with setting up people and donations of material, many types of projects like that. But the constituency work also, you've got two aspects. One is you're trying to push the Democratic Alliance and say, we are with you on the ground. I'm probably the only blonde person who walks around Umlazi on a regular basis, and they used to be quite rude to me, and now they just wave and hi, So my activists openly wear their DA shirts now in Umlazi, whereas 12 years ago they would have been stoned. It would have been that difficult. Now they wear them to work. It's not an issue. So I think that's working very well, and the recognition factor, I think Helen Ziller broke through that for us.
Yes.
And it's just continued and continued. We are contacted all the time on social media, Facebook, everywhere. How do I join? How do I join?
Really?
So everyone is coming to us. Before we would have to search for people to try and join. Now
that shows how that's all improving.
The queues for the interviews now are very long, in the hundreds. So it's quite fascinating to be part of the growth as the parties.
That's quite something. That's amazing. And if you had to lie in your bed at night and just think, sure, there's one wish that I'd like to do for my country, for South Africa, what do you think it would be?
Well, I've had some marvelous experiences where I was sent at, I think, 24 hours notice to Angola. I remember having umpteen injections because they've got everything, including the plague, I think. Very strange medieval type illnesses that you haven't heard of in so many years, and they advise you have to have a yellow fever shot and this and that. And I was doing radio interviews while they were busy injecting me all these things, and I rushed off there, and the ANC person didn't arrive. And they looked around and said, well, who's the most senior person here? And they all looked at me, and I ended up going in to represent the country with the speaker and doing, we sat at this huge table with a massive bands and things, and I said, well, we'll have to get up and dance or no one else will. So I had to take the speaker on the floor. So it was an extraordinary experience to suddenly be in a position where I was representing our country as opposed to simply watching someone else represent the country. And it's a very strange difference. And I think a lot of our new councillors in Johannesburg, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela, all the new metros that we won, have had to go through this, where suddenly, yesterday, they were opposition.
Yes.
Today, they are actually the government. So if there's a pothole, you can't complain.
No,
you have to
can't.
fix it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure it's a major mind shift for someone switching
huge.
from the one side to the other.
And how would you inspire women in general just to believe in themselves, not necessarily as a politician, just generally as a woman, to get out there and believe in themselves and do anything that they can?
Well, I think a woman has to understand that you have to get up and get up and get up, because you will be knocked down and knocked down and knocked down.
That's right.
There are still in this country, and I think will be for a very long time, men who do not believe women should have the right to have a voice. The fact that we have such a rape culture in this country says it all, because it means that men in this country, there are men, a great many men, and in some provinces it's worse than others, who simply believe they can help themselves to any woman or child or baby as they wish. So there are issues like that, but from an intellectual perspective, the difficulties that one faces, there's a certain degree of the man thing, and that it doesn't exist in the DA at all. I've never had.
That's wonderful.
There's no man who would dare say to me,
well, good, no, I can imagine.
It just wouldn't happen. But I certainly see it in other parties, and I see that women kowtow to the men, and I'm shocked when I see it still after all these years of women standing up for themselves.
Hey?
To still be in a subservient position is appalling. One of the things that you have to understand, I think, as a woman, is that you can do anything. You can achieve anything. Sure. If I think I have been flown to Germany to address Angela Merkel's think tank, I've had opportunities that 20 or 30 years ago I never in a million years would have thought I would have had. I've been to countries all over. I've represented this party in this country on many an occasion. So who knew that would happen? But it's been a case of you're going to fail. But if you don't try, you can never win. So if you don't put yourself out there, sit at home and knit and be something gentle, be something lovely and quiet, but then don't say, I wish I'd taken that step. But if you take the steps, you must know that when you stand for an election, you will lose, but maybe the next one you'll win. And I have certain councillors I've been grooming for years, and they tried and they didn't get in, and they tried. But now, this local, they're councillors today because they stuck to it.
And it's all about that. It's constantly trying and putting yourself out there.
Don't believe the negativity that other people will always spread about you. It's irrelevant. Just ignore it.
Terrible in that
and
way.
Work on.
I know. And do you think South Africa is ready for a female president?
I don't think so yet, because the Democratic Alliance hasn't got a female leader. Yes. We did have one, but she's gone. So when we've moved on to the stage where we as the DA have a female leader, and that will come, then I think we'll be ready as a country. But I can't imagine what this country would do under some of the people that the ANC are propelling forward. The very thought that any of them who really are not terribly good at what they do now, the thought of putting the country in their hands, really, surely we can do. I mean, we're all asking, how did we end up with Jacob Zuma? When the Constitution was written, they didn't plan for a Jacob Zuma. They planned for a Nelson Mandela, an honourable, upright, perfect person, and we've ended up with this, and now we've realised that in some areas perhaps there are things that a person can get away with that they should not be allowed to. But there's no woman that I have seen in the ANC, so I'm not even considering that. Yes. But obviously the aim is for the DA to take over very soon, and as Musi progresses and goes along, if he ever decides to go elsewhere, I'm sure at some stage a woman will come through the ranks and will challenge him, and he will have to go head to head with that person and may well lose. You don't know. He may win, he may lose. In our party, if you lose an election, you go and shake the person's hand and you move on. But other parties, I see they actually attack each other physically.
Oh, no, it's
doesn't
terrible.
happen.
No, exactly.
So you'll have to wait till we have
We will.
a
We'll
woman
have to wait
leader,
and see.
and then we
Yes,
can have the conversation
exactly.
again.
Perfect. Well, you'll be the first one I call.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure for me. And I think speaking to you and seeing how you inspire, you've inspired me. You will just go out there and continue inspiring people and uplifting people's lives. And I must admit, I believe that the DA is very lucky to have you, because you are a woman with a purpose and a woman who no one will take down. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
We could fly, we could fall, hit it big or lose it all.